It starts with modeling what is right. We've already talked about that in Deuteronomy. It's got to be on your heart in order for you to teach that to your children. You're modeling it. Your children are going to learn a whole lot more by watching you than necessarily what you've instructed them verbally. If your instructions verbally don't match what you're modeling, they're going to follow your model. Okay? An example of that, if you're reading through Kings especially, it's interesting. Kings usually will mention the mother of the king right after it says whether he was a good king or a bad king. Ouch! Okay? The king is too busy doing his king stuff, and so the responsibilities end up on the mom. And whether he's good or bad, and I think that's why it's in the scriptures. She was so-and-so, you know, the daughter of so-and-so, to identify her. So the king's reputation really was built on mom. So it is an example. There's good examples and bad examples. Azariah, for example, was very good. He followed his father's good example, and his mother was blessed because of it. Zechariah, last king of Israel, said he did evil as his fathers had done. That comes up a lot. Your modeling is important. And again, going back to Deuteronomy 6 through 9, it's every situation of life. You've got to keep that in mind. You're always teaching. Your example is always there. So it is when you sit down, when you lie down, when you rise up, when you walk on the way. There's a misnomer common in our society about quote-unquote quality time. I don't spend much time, but what I do is quality time. Well, guess what? Children need a large dose of quantity of time, not just quote-unquote quality of time. Quality of time, that is paying direct attention to the child, that's good. But again, children are learning constantly. They're watching you constantly, including when it's not direct. They're watching you from afar. It's the quantity of time. They need to see that. And actually, some of the most important lessons you'll teach them are not even the ones you thought you were teaching. It's just what they pick up by watching you.
Just to make a comment of that too, because it's hard for us to have dinner with all of us together, because Darren will come home late. And he came home the other day to come to dinner, and Raymond, we're sitting there, and Raymond goes, "Daddy, thank you for coming home for dinner." And aww. I mean, afterwards, when Darren's like, "Did you hear what he said?" He's like, "Oh," he's like, you know, just thinking that, like, yeah, he recognizes, you know, that, you know, and it's like, it's just from watching, but we never, you know.
Just had it. For our family, a lot of times dinner was too rushed because I had to be someplace. There's things in the evening, and as they got older, the thing I didn't like about teens is they were busy. But because we homeschooled, mornings were good. So we made breakfast as our main time when we would focus on things. But do try and do something where that's there. That's not instructional time in terms of I'm sitting down, I'm teaching my children this, although you may have devotions then, but it's the interaction of just normal life. Your children need that. So keep that in mind, especially dads, because you're the ones who have a harder time because you're away from the house so much. They need just to be around you. When the kids were little, but old enough to travel with me, I'd have to go on to conference or something. They'd go with me sometimes. And David most liked to do it. And we just had a great time in the car going up and back. And then I'd be visiting the meetings, and he might be doing schoolwork or something, and then he'd come and join us when we're eating meals and stuff. It was a great time with him. They actually got at that point, they said, "Oh, now we know the difference between daddy music and mommy music." Daddy likes Western music, and he likes listening to Sons of the Pioneers and stuff. So it kind of became a, oh, that's daddy music. And then what would they like? They ended up being more attracted to that. Around the house, and usually wouldn't play that. But when I was traveling, I liked playing that, so this is important. I had no idea how much it was affecting them, but it was affecting them. Even some of these ballads, because Daddy liked them, they started listening, and guess what? I was teaching. Don't think about that so much. What are you listening to? What are you watching? They're learning from that too. Is what you're doing something that's going to be teaching them something? You're always doing it. So be careful with that. You know, even in ministry, I have found that what's most important is my example. more than anything else. It's the interaction I have with people in many situations. Before I came out here, I had a discipleship group of young men in the church I had been at, and then I was their interim pastor. Most all of them were related to engineers or something. I was the guy who wasn't, and then there was one other fellow who was not an engineer, he was a carpenter. And I worked with him for 3 years, doing different things. He was in quite a few of my Bible studies and then personal discipleship as well. And then I was interim pastor for a little over a year, so I was learning to preach there. Praise God for the mercy of that church on me while learning to preach. Churches are to be blessed when they're putting up with that. But he had heard all my sermons, and they had a party for me just before we moved. And he said, you know, Scott, I don't remember anything you taught. What? What? What do you mean you don't remember anything? He said, but it's your life. Watching your life has changed me. And I'm like, oh, wow. Well, that's the way it is with parenting. It's a whole lot more who you are and what you are than necessarily what you have said. And I have to say that's probably one of my bigger frustrations as a pastor in a small church like this. There's not quite enough people to do all the administrative stuff that needs to be done. I can't get out the way I would like to. And I feel that that's what's being missed. But your children are there all the time. Understand, it is your life they are watching. Your words won't mean anything if your life isn't matching. Okay? You are teaching them. All right, so be consistent in practice. No contradiction in the home. Page 7. Okay, children observe, they will mimic what they see and hear, learning to talk. Guess who they sound like? Wow. I don't know how many people have asked me over the years what part of the South I'm from. I'm like, I'm not. I'm from California. My father's a Southerner. And yes, I pick up certain word phrases and certain vocabulary, and unfortunately even some grammatical structure. I mimic him.
So does Jonathan.
Well, Jonathan has a reason now. Now he's out in Virginia where they can speak decently. And that they know what y'all is. They also know what okra is, fried. All right, enough of that. But they are going to mimic you, and that's, again, part of it. So the consistency in your life is important. Otherwise, you confuse them. You know, if you are on them about how they speak and their language and what words they use, and then they get in the car and you are not that way toward the driver who just cut you off, you've just confused them. If you are telling them, do not lie, you can't lie, we have to tell the truth, and now they're old enough and they pick up the phone and you tell them, well, just say daddy's not here. You've confused them. That's lying. There has to be a consistency in your life there. You're the parent, and so you set the standards for your family. Okay? That's up to you. All the specific standards, the general standards are taken care of in Scripture, but the specific application is in your family. So here's the fill-ins. You set the standard. This is our home. This is the standard for our home. You set it. Second, you live by that standard. If you set the standard for your home, you live by your own standard. So you live by that standard. Next, you encourage to that standard. So you encourage your children, this is the standard we've set, here's how we're living, and you encourage them to meet that standard. This is what we do. And then you correct to the standard. This is what's required in our home. Now for that, you have to be careful about outside influences. Now I'm emphasizing something else here, and that's family identity that comes with this. This is the standard of your home. You believe that, well, I remember actually something coming from your parents. They wanted to be careful about birthday parties on Sundays because they wanted Sunday to be a day set apart. So they set a standard for your home. And I respected them greatly for this because if it was a party on a Sunday, they didn't attend. They wanted to set a standard of holiness. This is what they believed was important. Extremely important thing to do. This is our family. We're Jordans. This is how we do it. Now, other families didn't have to hold to that, and they were gracious with us. Okay, you can do what you want, but this is our family. Well, we did the same thing. We're Harrises. This is our standard. And I know one that kind of got conflict with Jonathan with some of the people his age. Is our standard is before we go see a movie, we want to know what it's about. You remember this. And so he would often get in trouble with his friends with, well, did anybody check out to see what this movie's about? No. What's recently playing? So let's go to see it. I'm not gonna, let's find out. So you find out what it's about. So I can't go watch that. It's, you know, and you give the reasons why. It's like, he didn't want to put it on anybody else. He said, but this is my standard and I have to live by that. So I want to emphasize that. Your standard doesn't have to be exactly that of everybody else. Everybody's standard, if you're Christians, should fit in on the general thing of you're striving to figure out how to walk in holiness. Like we learn from each other. But that's your family. Okay? Okay, the Harrises, the Jordans, were similar in so many different ways, and there's a few things we were different in, and that's fine. They were the Jordans, we were the Harrises. We set a standard, we lived by our standard, we encouraged that standard, and we corrected our standard within our own home. We also taught them to respect other families. That's going to be the same thing in your family. Okay? This Jordan family is a different Jordan family. And I'm sure your standards in your Jordan family will be different than your siblings, right? But we're Jordans. This is our home. This is what we do. You set that standard. That's true for everybody, all right? So I just want to make that clear. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but make sure you're holding your children to the identity of your own family and be proud of it, and yet gracious to others. Okay? Don't be careful of the outside influences. They're going to come from all sorts of different ideas. We want to make sure we're also teaching to that standard and our biblical reasons for it. Because we want to eventually not just here's our outside actions, here's our reasoning behind it, because when they get out of your house, you want them to establish their own family and set the standards for their own home, and they may be slightly different than yours. But you want them to own that because they understand the concept. And let's face it, as society keeps changing, it may need to be something different than what you have because it may be more dangerous. And what you thought was no big deal suddenly is, I can't even allow that in. What are we going to do with this whole thing with streaming and the filth that comes in over the internet? You know, I didn't have to think about that when my kids were little. What's an internet? You know, okay, you have a net here and you catch big fish and a smaller fish here. Or, you know, a net with, inside a net is an internet, right? I had no idea what that was. It didn't exist. According to Al Gore, he hadn't invented it. Yeah, right. Right, Al. Let's talk about global warming too, and praise God for global warming. I can't wait for spring to come. Sorry. It may have to be different. When I was a kid, I grew into public school. No one thought twice about it. My wife, I guess I didn't do my school, she's 1 year ahead of me. She remembers praying in public school. I don't remember that, but I do remember, I remember the Baptist church having things on campus, and there was never thought about it, that you were commended if you were going to church and stuff. We homeschooled because we didn't trust our school district by talking to teachers within the district. What you're having to deal with, it's very different than what we dealt with even with our kids. David's in the district, in Poughkeepsie district, teach another school, and what's being crammed down their throats and the laws, you may have to have a different standard than what you had. So I just need to keep that emphasis. You set the standard according to what you understand Scripture says, and it's okay if it's different than others. The goal here, train your children to think biblically. And yes, it does begin even when they're toddlers. Okay, because you're changing their behavior, but you're also going to be telling them why. Even when they don't understand. 3, 4 years old, you can still say, we do this because, and not a long explanation, this is what God wants. All right, personal holiness is the quest. Be careful of the outside influences. That includes child care, school, friends, family, television. Monitor what they watch, especially children's programs. Remember, Sesame Street was not created for your child. Sesame Street was created for intercity children who had no one watching them. And it has that philosophy within it. It doesn't match a philosophy, a biblical philosophy. Be careful even of those things. Know what they're watching. Okay? I know it's a one-eyed, easy babysitter. Be careful. You need to know what's in that program.
You know, the biggest thing about that, from Cynthia and I, is like, you can't even, like YouTube, you can't even, like, the show that you stream through YouTube may be good, but then the ads pop up. Like, Cynthia and I will be, put a show on for Monique, and we almost have to be ready for the ads come up, because the ads are, who knows what the ads could be, you know?
Hence,
Yeah.
DVDs are still good if you can find them, or Blu-ray, whatever else, where you know what's there. You're going to have to be more and more careful, because it's an insidious thing for people to affect your children, and they want to affect your toddler too. It starts that early, so be careful, okay? That's a lot just to make that emphasis. Be careful as they get into too many activities as well. We've seen that happen. They're involved in sports and dance and this thing and that thing and this club, and for example, where's the time with the family? If they're involved with other things, that's fine, but pick one or two, but never at the expense of your family time. It's much better to be they're at home with you and Dad reads them a book than they're at dance class. Or that, I don't know, you show something that you can learn some dance moves with the family. Okay, we can do this and it's part of our activities. You have to be careful here. But you set that standard for your family. You're going to choose which begin, but it's got to be your family that sets the standard. You set that standard and help your children with it. D, you're promoting holiness. That's the quest. God says we are to be holy as He is holy. It's in the Old Testament, it's in the New Testament. That's the goal, because sin is serious. That's the blank there. It is serious. And so there has to be serious efforts to oppose it. And you can see it in a 2-year-old. There is sin crouching at the door wanting to control your little girl, little boy. And if you present yourselves as servants to obey sin, it is your master. It's Romans 6. If you set righteousness to be your master, to serve it, it will be your master. And one ends up in death and the other ends up in life. So from early on you're doing this. So yes, even with your little toddler, you're promoting holiness. That has got to be in the back of your mind of what you're doing, even though a lot of this stuff seems so simple. Holiness is the key. Now let's get some practical things. Clear commands. We're not to exasperate our children. One of the first rules is make sure they understand what the command is, which means it has to be clear. And there's so many things that can block that. The whole thing I did on communication some months ago is how difficult communication is. So you're telling your child, and you said it to them while you were trying to do something else, and they didn't even hear you. It's muddled. They have no idea what you're talking about. Or they don't understand the language yet. They don't understand the vocabulary that you're using. Or there's actually lack of instructions. You haven't been clear of exactly what you want them to do, and so they're wondering, I'm not sure what to do. And let's face it, the younger they are, the harder that is, because they're really not sure what you're talking about. You know, but they don't. You've got to do the instructions on that. Another one, changing requirements. They're used to a routine, and we're doing this, and you flip it on them, and they don't understand why. And then you want to hold them accountable for something they don't even understand. Or worse than that is the inconsistency that may be there. You've got to be consistent. If you require, this is the standard, you've got to be consistent with whatever that standard is. If you keep flipping it, or you hold them to it at this point and then let them get away with it, or gamble.
So I have a question with that. So like, one of the things I have to do with Joseph that I didn't really do with Raymond is I have to say, like if I give him a command, like, Joseph, come back and give Mommy the block, because I want to put a toy away. And now I know he understands, and now I know that it's foolishness because he'll look at me and then not do it. And then now, is it, like, what I usually do is I kind of give him a second chance, even though I want him to be a first-time obedience, and I say, Joseph, if you don't give Mommy the block, then Mommy's going to discipline you. Most of the time, not all the time, that will change in him, and then he will do it. But I'm thinking, like, is that not a good? Or I'll count down. Okay, Mommy's going to count to 3. If you don't come at the end of 3, Mommy's going to discipline you because you're not listening to me. And then he will. But is that because I'm giving him too many chances instead of just listening the first time? But sometimes he listens the first time, sometimes I have to go to that extent.
So, who's consistent, who's inconsistent?
I'm inconsistent because I expect first time
So-
obedience, and he does it sometimes, and then sometimes they
Okay,
get those chances.
you might remember when you were in one of these other ones, a child will obey you when the child knows they have to obey. So they can obey you at count 10, or 5, or 3, or 1. It's your consistency that matters. Now, let's go back to that. Joseph's how old now?
He'll be 2 in a
He's
couple
almost
months.
2. All right. So the difference between him and Raymond is quite a bit in understanding. So the same thing is going to be, are you sure they understand the command? So we instruct them. Okay, we're going to practice the instruction. Now that we can see they understand it, they're capable of doing it, now we can encourage them toward it. So there's going to be a whole lot of rewards. You put the block in there, they do it, yay, good job. Or if they, especially if they've done it well, is give them a hug or something. You did a good job in cleaning up. That makes it easier on mommy. That's obeying on that. God likes that. Notice what I just did? God likes that. I'm going to keep putting in that this is really eventually about God. Okay? If they understand the instructions, they're capable of doing it, and you know they heard you and understood you, and they don't do it, now what is it? Is it childishness or foolishness? Okay. So what do we give correction for? Foolishness. Okay? Instruction is about making sure they can do it. Okay? Now at 2, you probably have him trained to come when you call him, right? Answer and call. All right, at this point at 2, he's been doing that for how long? Probably 6 months or more, right? Because I think you generally would teach them about the time they're walking on their own, you start instructing them that. So by 2, they've been doing this for 6 months or more.
Yeah.
So you call them, he comes. Did he hear you? That's why we say make sure they answer. If you call them, they should answer something. It should be some kind of respectful thing. And yes, mommy, yes, ma'am, whatever, something respectful. And then you know they heard you. You already know they're capable because they've been practicing, they come. Now if he defies you and says no, well that's easy, right? That's obvious defiance. What if he answered and he still doesn't come?
Right.
Well, what is that?
That's still defiance, disobedience.
That's still defiance and disobedience.
Yeah.
Now, you may have to check to see why he didn't come, like, well, he's not potty trained yet. Raymond would be potty trained, so he's a little indisposed at the moment, so he couldn't come. Okay, you can find that out. There's no legitimate reason he didn't come? Okay, there's going to be a correction. Okay, that's what you're looking for. Instruct, practice, encourage, correct. The correction has to do with defiance of, I'm going to do it my way, I'm not going to listen to you because I'm God. That's the foolishness. I want to be my own God. I can choose for myself. So with the blocks, I'll make it very practical. 1, did you give a command?
Yes.
Was
Just
it-
put the blocks away. It's time to clean up. Go, or give mommy the block. It's time to
Okay.
clean up.
Now, that's one of the first things that often happens because people will not give a clear command. So that's actually there in your notes there. You need to say what you mean and mean what you say. And when it comes to commands, you give a command. That's your blank there. When you require them to obey instructions, give commands, not suggestions, not questions. Not like, Joseph, would you please give mommy the block? Or even worse, would you like to give mommy the block? No, I would like to keep the block. Well, you just gave them the option. So it has to be a clear command. Joseph, give mommy the block. So now you're setting them up for a clear understanding of what's required. Without that, it's muddled. A classic one is, would you like to go to bed now? Well, you need to go to bed, but I want to stay up. You gave me the option. They're going to express it that way, but that's what they're thinking. So where's the consistency? Consistency is clear commands. They know it's command, and it could be also is make sure you have the right voice for it. There's a command voice, and sometimes that can be the repeated instruction. That's the second time. Joseph, give mommy the block. It's time to clean up. And he seems bewildered or confused. It's like, Joseph, give mommy the block. We're going to clean up now. Do you understand, Joseph? Notice what I just did. He answers yes or no. Now you have a greater understanding, he understands it. So what's it going to move into? Is it going to be foolishness or obedience? You've set him up for that. That's a clear command, and all you've done with the second repeating of it is clarified for yourself, he understands.
Not necessarily give him that another chance, like, okay, I'm gonna count to 3, because now I know he understood after the second reminder.
Exactly, and that's the difference. You're giving another chance. I'm saying you don't give another chance. You're clarifying for yourself
Understand.
that they understand, and now you hold them accountable to it.
Makes sense, yeah.
Now, they may have hung themselves to begin with, just by how they answered. You know, clear the dock, yes, mommy, and you can watch them. They look at you in the block and they're going to,
Yeah.
okay, you can tell that. But if there's a question in your mind, whether they understand, just clarify.
Yeah.
That's their only other opportunity. Other than that, be consistent. What ends up happening, we're not consistent. So one time, we have to do this quickly so they're held accountable and it's immediate. The next time, you're a little more flexible and you give them another opportunity. Or you count to 10 instead of 3 or 4 or whatever. The number keeps
5.
changing.
That's my
Which is the number that I'm going to use? Because again, they're going to obey you at the proper number if you're consistent with it. If you're not, hey, it was 10 last time, maybe she'll go back to 10. I got 3, I got 5, I got 10, but I'm not going to obey. They will obey you when they know. If that means your neck vessels have to pop up, and your face is red, and your voice is, they'll obey you then. But that's how you train them. This is where consistency is so crucial. You've got to be consistent. Problem is for us, how often, we've done the same thing. It's, I'm busy, and it's like, please obey me. I don't have time to correct you. So I will give the extra because I just don't want to take the time. The inconsistency is me, not them. Because it's a pain. You're out shopping. You've got all sorts of things that are going to happen. And they start acting up in the store. What are you going to do? Well, okay. You know, we know what you're going to do. You're going to try and start bartering with them. Look, I'll give you a piece of candy if you'll just obey me right now because I got to get this done. What did you just do? You just undercut all of your parenting in just a moment, just like that. Okay? You're inconsistent and they got it. I got her. All right, now I know. Not only can I do what I want, I can even get rewarded for it if I wait for the proper time. Now, I'm not sure what the proper time is yet, but I'm going to look for it again. So, which is more important? The errand, or whatever you're doing, or your child? So yes, it does mean you leave the groceries there. I remember Diane had to leave, she was at BJ, so she had a basket full of stuff, and she put it aside, and she actually told someone, like, I'm going to be back, I got to go deal with something. He was one of the kids. So I'm going to deal with something, I'll be back. You know that's a pain, especially when you get back and someone else didn't know. They put all your stuff away. I got to go shopping again. How important is your child? Okay, so consistency, consistency, consistency. That's this whole thing. Give clear commands, make sure they understand you. Now, the other thing I have in there, so I had, make sure it's a command, not a suggestion, okay, not a question, it's an actual command. You want them to obey? Give a command. You want to give them the option? You can do that. Would you like to go to bed now? If you want to give them the option, that's fine. But if you actually want them to go to bed, give a command. Use a tone of voice. There's a command voice, and then there's your other voices. Use a command voice. Hey, it even works on my dog. Jimmy's dog. If I say it, man, the dog goes because it already knows what's going to happen if I give it that way. So it's a command voice. Our children understand that. A command voice. It's a firm voice. The other one, make sure you have their attention. We do it this way, okay, because they need to make eye contact and have even a proper position toward you. And I go, look right here, and they're looking at it. Right here, and I grab them, like, look right here, and then they're looking at you, and like, then you get the command. Do you understand? Okay, see the difference? And yes, on a 2-year-old, on a 3-year-old, make sure they're looking right here. You know, sometimes you're looking right there at your nose. Like, I hope I don't have something hanging out my nose or something, but you're like, I want your attention. You know, and when you finally have that, and that includes even how they are. They should be standing or sitting and looking, not wiggling all around. You got their attention. Now you know they understand because you can see it in their eyes. So all this is about clarity of communication. So give clear commands, that's all part of it. Now the other part is going to, even with a 2-year-old, we're going to start giving principles. Now they're simple things because we want to make sure we start early for ourselves to train the heart, otherwise it's just behavior. Look, you can teach a dog tricks. You don't have a dog, you have a child. You want the child to function on its own. So it's something as simple as this. We don't pull the flowers off the houseplants. Why? What reason would you give to a 2-year-old?
It's gotta be them and they're beautiful to look at, for others to see, and for us to watch grow.
Bingo. Okay, you're going to train it because what you want in the child's heart? A thoughtfulness for others, and that we should do that for God, right? So don't pull the flowers off the houseplants. We want other people to enjoy them as well. Or don't pull the flowers out of the garden wherever it is. We want other people to enjoy it just the way you did. Okay? Now as they get older, you give more explanation from it. But for a 2-year-old, that's simple. We want other people to enjoy the flowers too. Now it might be confusing, but you're going to keep repeating that same kind of lesson over and over. Well, we don't do that because it's going to affect other people. And that includes, okay, 2-year-olds, you're playing with other, and guess what 2-year-olds do? They fight each other over a toy, usually, right? They take the toy and bop the other one. Okay, you're going to correct them. Do not hit. Why? I hope it's not, if you hit them, I'm hitting you. That's not the reason, okay? That may be the consequence of chase, you know, you're going to be chastised. That's not the moral reason. What's the moral reason? Okay, we treat people as precious because God made them. That's it. That's so simple. But that's the moral reason. That's what we want to instill so that as they're getting older, they're starting to understand, I have a responsibility to God of responding to things around me because they actually belong to God. People are precious to God, so they have to be precious to me. Even the kid who just whacked me first, so I'm hitting him because he hit me back, and we don't do it that. We treat people as precious because God made them. That's very simple. When we start with a 2-year-old and we keep expanding as they get older, how then do we respond to the, to all the others? We'll get more detailed theology later. But for a little kid, it's that simple. Keep pulling it back to this is what God wants. And that's why we do the things we do. Okay? Now some of it can be practical. You need to do this because if you don't, you're going to end up hurting yourself. Okay? That's why you mentioned about, I think I was talking about reaching for the stove and hot, right? We don't touch the stove, you'll get hurt. I don't want you to get hurt. Okay? Very simple reasons, and they can be simple. Make sure you start there for your own benefit of making sure that becomes your way of life. Simple, succinct, direct. Not big, long theological discussions. Okay, they don't understand that. Theological discussions come later when they can understand it. Okay? Any questions about that? All right, then let's go to behavioral control. Okay? Number 4, page 8. Actually, I got a lot to go through here, so I'm going to zip through some of this fast. Now, these are practical things, and if you want an expansion on that, we can do that. But each one of these things about different age groups. So they're crawling, reaching, walking. There's external boundaries. And with every phase, the boundaries expand. That goes back to this funnel. When they gain responsibility, you give them more freedom. But their physical abilities are pushing the boundaries, and they always will. With each phase of development, with these new skills, abilities, come privileges, but also responsibilities and accountability for that. Because with the ability to reach comes responsibility of learning what to touch, what not to touch. The ability to crawl comes the responsibility of what areas are off limits. Okay? Or when Jonathan was learning to crawl, so many cabinets, so little time. All right, because open what's in the cabinet, you're going to doing that. Now that goes to the practical thing. What about modern baby proofing? There's a safety measure, no doubtedly. Don't want any of your products that could harm your child within reach where the child could get it. If it's got to be in some cabinet which is low enough for the child to get into, you got to have a lock on it, okay? At least have a catch where they can't get open. Though do understand if your child's mechanically inclined like Jimmy was, they can probably get into it easier than you can. So you gotta be careful there. Keep dangerous things out of reach where they can't get it. However, leave some things purposely where they can get to them so you can have the conflict come up for the purpose of teaching. That includes something as simple as you got a coffee table, you got things on the coffee table. Don't leave your Hummel there. Don't leave something breakable that's a precious heirloom, okay? Keep those out of reach. You don't want to have those. But keep something that if they grab it, it's not going to harm anything. It won't harm them, and if they tear it all up, it's not going to harm you. But it becomes a test of what they can touch and what they can't. Self-control comes from teaching them from a very early age, do not touch without mommy's permission, with daddy's permission. So the coffee table is there, it's a magazine you don't care about, because you may walk in and it's all over the floor, all torn to shreds, because they had a great time ripping each page, all right? But if it's there, then it can also be as you can see them reaching for it, and you say, no. And they'll look at you and turn around, like, I said, no, do not touch the magazine. It belongs to mommy, not you. There's the principle. That's as simple as it has to be. Now, if they keep reaching for it, now you're going to bring correction in, because now it's foolishness. Okay? Childishness is, I want to explore the world. Foolishness is, I want to explore the world in the areas that are out of bounds for me. Okay? So set those things up. Yes, ma'am.
With in our case, because I always tell Rebecca not to touch this because this is daddy's thing. I think I have developed a different attitude, because if it's hers, she doesn't want anybody to touch her things.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's good or not.
Yes and no. It's good and bad.
Yeah.
How to touch it and when. Okay? Number one, because we're going to get into that too. What actually belongs to her?
Like,
Nothing. Okay? She has nothing that's her own. It all belongs to you and Sam. Okay?
but the thing is, she knows this is her towel,
Okay.
and if I use it, because sometimes I have this thing that after I wash my hands, I just dry it with her towel, and
Okay.
if she sees me doing that, Mom, that's mine.
Okay.
Don't use it. She's
Several problems here. Number one, she's taking responsibility that doesn't belong to her. Okay, she wants to correct you. It's not her position. Number two, and I want to be serious about this one, she owns nothing. All right? Now, this is going to be important as they get older, because they're going to think everything I touch is mine. No. It belongs to your mommy. It belongs to mommy and daddy. We let you use it. Okay? Huge difference there. Now, when it comes to certain toys, you want to have one or two things that actually you would say, this is yours. Because you do want to teach them responsibility and being able to handle something that belongs to them. But when she's doing this kind of thing, she's taking ownership of what doesn't belong to her. That's a big difference. So what else is she going to just graduate as, that's mine too, because I got to use it. Does she own her clothes? No. That way, when she grows out of them and you want to give them away, is God let you have these clothes while we had them, and now they're too big, we're going to let God bless somebody else with them. Okay? You see, do you see the mindset that is there? Because that's what I want to try. I want to train my child's heart to be generous and understand everything that I have, I only have briefly. I don't really own it. I have a stewardship responsibility. That's where you're going to go with this eventually. So that's why there's going to be a toy or something that's going to be special. She's a steward of it. If it becomes, it's mine, no. That's selfishness. Okay? Now it's proper to say is, do not touch, that is daddy's. Why? Because daddy's responsible to God for that thing. Okay? That's where you're still going to go there. That's not your responsibility. He's responsible to God for that. And he's not giving you permission. Hence coming in where his lines of authority. So at a young age, we're teaching them these concepts. Now they're simple concepts, but they have ramifications, huge ones as they get older. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, that's how you want to approach these things. So there's these boundaries, but again, you're going to teach, you're going to train, they're going to practice it, you're going to encourage them, then you're correct when they're wrong. For this one, I would have a conversation with her, is like, this is not yours. She's going to try that again. And with his, Rebecca, you have two problems. Number one, you don't correct mommy. Okay? You don't do that. That's not up to you yet. You're not old enough to do that. Well, actually, three things. Two, you told mommy in the wrong way. It's one thing if she'd ask, is mommy, please don't use this. But she was giving you command? Okay. Rebecca does not command mommy. Okay? Three, Rebecca, this towel actually belongs to me and your daddy. We let you use it. So there's three things there. Now you want to train them for that. But understand, now if she continues in trying to correct you, well, now you're going to have to correct her. We don't treat mommy that way. Why? It is disrespectful to me, and God commands you to respect mommy and daddy. You need to obey us. We are not commanded to obey you. We're commanded to instruct you. That's the order of life. That's important. Okay, does that help? Mm-hmm. Okay. It's easy to fall into these traps. Very easy. And even after you think you've got it, you can still fall back into them. And say, okay, I got to climb back out of this one and let's get it going again. Because it pops up all over the place when you didn't expect it. But again, this whole thing, teach, train, practice, encourage, correct. Leave opportunity for the conflict to develop so you have the opportunity to teach. You have the opportunity to teach in the conflict. Obviously, you're going to teach before that, but if you don't have it there, you're in trouble. Okay? They're not going to learn the lessons. So, again, simple things like this. Leave something out on the coffee table that you don't mind if it gets ruined. Put away the dangerous stuff. Put away the stuff that's heirlooms so they don't break it. But do that. If it's hitting and stuff like that, it's the same kind of thing. It's going to be a correction well, let's talk about correction. What do they do if they're reaching for something they shouldn't reach for? This is, babies crawl and they're starting to grab things. So what's a proper correction?
No.
No, yeah, it's a firm no. And then what? Okay, if they don't understand yet, you're going to move them, right? No, and you move them away from it. Okay, now we've moved it. It's not childishness anymore. They're a toddler, they're zipping around. You've already told them no, you know they understand you. If it's an issue of foolishness, what are you going to do? And it's a hand offense. Just a little slap on the hand, okay? It doesn't have to be just enough to cause a sting, all right? That's it, a sting. But the sting has got to be more than the pleasure of the sin, okay? And it can escalate from there. It can be a sting, and then, okay, you can't seem to keep your hands in the right place, then you get isolated because you're not keeping that. When we got older, Jimmy had a hard time with his hands. I'm not going to get into all the stories about Jimmy. He didn't have much in the way of nerve endings in his hands, so that didn't do much. We go into stores and he wanted to touch everything. So it was a very simple thing we taught him as Jimmy, self-control, which meant because he couldn't touch things, so he'd be like, you know, but he couldn't touch things. So you work with your child with their abilities and everything else. It may mean multiple things, but the simplest thing is they're reaching for the stove. No, if they understand what no is, which you've taught it, and certainly Rebecca knows what no is, and that's very simple. Reach for the stove, like no, Mom, and then slap. Do not touch. You will get hurt. Okay, that's that simple. You're reaching for the magazine. No, that does not belong to you. So it's a simple thing. All right, now we're going to talk about chastising a little bit more in a few minutes, so let me get to that a little later. Let's go back to first time obedience, page 8. You obey your parents, first time, right away, with a happy face. That's where you want to go. Toddlers, happy face comes later. They answer you, they come. That's it. Make it a game. If they haven't done it already, make it a game. You come back and forth. They're thrilled, go into different rooms, call each other back and forth. Practice that for a week or two. All right? Practice them saying yes, ma'am, yes, mommy. Reward them with praise. Oh, good for coming to mommy. Good for coming to daddy. Good to say, you know, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, whatever your terms are going to be, right? After they've gotten that, they practice it, so they understand you. They practice it. They can do it. Now, is it going to be childish or foolishness when they won't do it? If it's moved into foolishness, then you're going to have to do some correction. Understand this, why it's important. Because delayed obedience is disobedience. All right, that's your blank. Delayed obedience is disobedience. If they don't do it the first time when you said, and you were consistent, because now they know it means the first time, not 3, 5, 10, bulging jugular veins. Okay, so you have to be consistent here. If you're not consistent, correct yourself first. Be consistent, okay, so they know it there. But the delayed obedience then is disobedience. And again, safety comes into this. That's point C there, but it requires it. Stop, so they don't go in the street. Don't touch, they're going to get burned. And again, this whole first time obedience removes the confusion of the child. Because otherwise they're always guessing. I don't know when to obey. And I'll gamble if I can get away with what I want. Now again, how to gain it? This is just talking about coming, but if anything else, you explain what you want, you demonstrate it to them until they understand, and then you practice it, and then you do it. And that's everything. Okay, sit time. You're going to sit in this chair. You're going to demonstrate. Just sit in this chair, and then they can spend time there. That's going to be self-control. Now think about it. How many situations in life will your child have where they have to sit in a chair and not move because it's required of them in order to learn? Our life is spent doing that. Do they have the self-control to sit in a chair? Can you trust them not to go somewhere? All right? A playpen, and I know you can't find playpens anymore. We looked for them. And if you can find them, they're heirlooms and they're extremely expensive. Figure out something. I know they make the gate things you put together and you make your own playpen. That to me is inconvenient, but something. That's an external boundary that helps. Room time, as they get older, external boundary. You want to eventually have them self-control where they sit on a rug and they don't get off the rug. That's self-control. That's kind of where you want to go with it, but again, it's going to take that kind of practice. But every single lesson in life is still going to be the same kind of thing. Make sure you instruct clearly, they understand it, you demonstrate it to them, you practice it, you encourage them to it, and then once they know all those things, you hold them accountable. And once you're at the point of holding them accountable, it stays held accountable. Don't keep going back and forth, okay? Our tendency can be is like, well, maybe they didn't understand. Like, no, they already demonstrated they understood. Hold them accountable, be consistent. It's difficult, but be consistent, okay? What's the correction? Well, first there's going to be verbal correction, okay? That's going to be just showing your displeasure. Saying things, you know, it was bad of you to do this. I'm disappointed in you doing this. There's an admonishment. This is what you need to do. That's for simple things. The rewards, the affection, that's all the positive side. Here's the negative side. So it's going to be, I'm disappointed. This was bad. That's a bad thing to do. Now that's, again, a simple thing. They didn't do it. That can be a reminder as well. Let's say they've been very good at coming and they didn't come. Then it's going to be, you didn't come. Why? Okay, that was a bad thing to do. You need to come. Let's practice again, all right? It escalates when it is clear foolishness and defiance. This is where even how they say it. For example, a child may be muttering, and you give them the command, they go, and they've heard you saying, no, 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 right? You mentioned that earlier. And they go, no, 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 no. And they're just kind of wandering toward you, but they're saying no. Is that defiance? No. That's childishness, okay? But what happens when you call them, and they say they come, and they go, yes, Mommy. Well, I need you to come and do this. No. Or what if they're looking at you? No. Okay? As defiance increases, so does correction. All right? Because there's no room there. If there's uncertainty, make sure you're certain they understand and can do it. It may be, if they've been consistent, there's inconsistency, it's a verbal admonishment. But once it's defiance, it's going to have to be something artificial or a natural consequence. If you delay it, we already read the proverb, or Ecclesiastes, it helps create in them a heart of defiance. They'll do it. You need to do it in immediacy. You want to bring in enough pain that it corrects it. Now there's natural consequences. Let's say you said, no, don't touch the stove, and they grabbed it before you could get there. Do you need to correct them? Do you need to chastise them? Absolutely not. The pain of what they just suffered is enough. What will you do? You explain. This is why Mommy told you no. Mommy did not want you to get hurt. Let's bandage your hand. Okay, there's compassion there, but guess what there was too? There's correction. Here's the consequence. You did what was wrong. This is the reason I told you not to do it. That's a natural consequence. What if they reached for and grabbed the magazine, pulled it off the table, you had said no, and they didn't damage it? You're going to have to artificially consequence, right? You're going to take the magazine, you're going to say, Mommy said no, and you're going to slap their hand when they're little. It escalates as they get older, but that's all you really need for little ones. It's just a reminder, this is a no. Artificial consequences are trying to prevent them from having the more serious consequences that come later if you do not amend the behavior and the heart that's behind it. All right? If you keep that idea in mind, you can pretty well adjust what has to happen. How much there. For Jimmy, without pain sensitivity, we got into all sorts of things. He loved electrical plugs, and he liked to stick things in them. He ended up burning his hands even, and he still wanted to do it. So we had to basically wire in all the plugs that were supposed to stay in, so otherwise he'd unplug them. We go to someone's house, and at 3, he'd tell you how many electrical outlets there were in the house. And I'm not joking about that, including the ones behind couches. What is with this kid? So we leave a few out in the open that he could unplug, simply so we'd have the opportunity to correct him. But the correction went from a slap to having to isolate him, sometimes for long periods of time. And he'd be just sitting there like, why are you sitting there? Because I was pulling the plug. When could you get down? Well, I apologize. Okay. It may have to escalate depending on your child. Others, it's going to be, it's simple. You do it, one slap, and that's it for life. Praise God. Your child's going to vary, and your multiple children will vary from child to child. You have to take the principle and apply it to your child. Okay? So, Joseph and Raymond are different from each other. Okay? You're finding boys and girls can be different from each other. And as they get older, you'll notice that even more so. Okay?
I just have a question with isolation. So like, when I isolate, I try to do like their timeout is based on their age. So Raymond, he'll be isolated for 3 minutes. And then Joseph, you know, a minute. We're getting longer for him. Is that, you know, or do I wait? Because now, like, I've taught them, like, when you're calmed down. So then Joseph will be sitting in timeout, and he'll be like, I'm all calmed down, I'm all calmed down, I'm all calmed down. But he just got there. It's only been like 20 seconds, but I want him to stay there longer. So do I, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
like, how long is isolation?
All right. There might be some general things from age, but it has to do with your child, not the age.
Yeah.
It has to do with the offense of how long they may be out.
Okay.
And isolation, remember, is removing them from the privilege they just had. So isolation is good for a lot of things. For example, they're abusive to other kids. Okay, I'm isolating, you don't have the privilege of being with those kids. Isolation could be just they're isolated from the thing that they wanted to. They're not playing with the toy properly. I've isolated the toy. You may not play with this toy.
Then do
It's
you
taken
give them
away
a
from you.
chance to then try it again? Like, you know, if I isolate and take out a toy, then in my head I'm like, okay, now I want to bring him back and say, okay, this is how we play with this toy. Show Mommy that you can play this way with the toy, or then you know, to give him that chance to try again.
You'll give them a chance again,
Right.
but definitely not that day.
Not that day.
Okay.
No.
You're going to give some time, so there's actually some pain. Here's the problem. We are compassionate, and so we want to remove that pain as soon as possible. If the pain is not great enough, whether it's a pain of isolation, pain of losing the privileges, the pain of the natural consequences, or the artificial consequences, whatever it is you brought to bear, is not greater than the sin, they're going to go back to it. So don't shortchange the pain. It's got to be there. And once it's great enough, now I can go back to, okay, for example, it's a toy, they've been abusing the toy, okay, you may not play with this toy, you're not playing with it correctly. Now it could be an age thing, they just don't know how to. You will assess that, you know, but if they've been playing with it properly before, then you know they can. So then it's like, we'll try it again tomorrow. How do you even give them that? Even young ones, as they start getting a time element, that there's going to be hope for the future, but not for the present. Otherwise, they want to do what your kids are doing, that's controlling you. Because they've recognized the standard is, I'm calm, I'm calm, I'm calm, I'm calm, let me go. They're not calm, okay? All right, is you will sit there until mommy thinks you're ready. Okay, now there's an unknown. Now you may instruct them is, you need to be calm and I need to understand you're calm. I need to see it, not just you telling me.
Right.
Otherwise, he's manipulating you.
Right, or I'm giving him too much responsibility where he's not there yet to even understand, to know what it means to be calm.
So this is the same principle, and that's always going to be what you're struggling as a parent, because we want to be compassionate to kids. We do. And it's hard. You know, I remember my dad, you know, getting the switch and whacking. He said, this hurts me more than, you know, this hurts me more than you, son. I'm like, oh, yeah, right, Dad. Well, you know what? When I had to chastise my own, it's true. It does, because I don't want to. But I know I need to. So the pain has to be enough. So it's isolation. It needs to be long enough as you determine it that it's corrected him. So it could be in isolation, you're going to sit in this chair, or you're going to be in your room until I come up. Or another one, when you get into the older phases, is they're going to be chastised physically, because that's going to be part of your punishment. But that's not the toddlers. They're going to sit in the room until I come in. Oh, that's horrible on them. Just sitting there waiting. But you have to determine that as a parent. And that goes back to a very simple principle. You're the parent. You are responsible for training them. You've got to adjust whatever you're doing for your child at that moment for whatever's going on, so that it actually can teach them the lesson. And that's going to vary a lot. If you make it a very strict thing of, well, when you're calm, and he's saying he's calm, your standard just got off. The standard is when you think he's ready because he's learned his lesson. And that may vary from time to time because you're watching him. You're going to watch them to see that they learn how to manipulate you very easily. They know what to say. A lot of kids are very good at, they know they're going to correct it, so they just start bawling before they do you've even said anything. They're just crying, oh, and I want to comfort them. And like, yeah, they're just manipulating you all over the place. We watched our niece do that. We were watching her, and had to be corrected, and she started bawling like crazy. And then something else came up, and it was like that. I mean, it's just like, just happy to be like, oh man, you manipulator. We're all good at it, aren't we? Aren't we all good at that? Manipulating the other people, we figure out what works. You kids are excellent at it. And I know they're only 2 years old, but they know how to twist you around their little finger. You have to be the parent. So you are the one who decides and adjusts and make sure they understand that. So it's not, here's my standard, when you meet this standard, it's going to be when mommy decides. You're going to wait there. Okay? And you ask some questions. Mommy will ask you and see if you're calm. That's what I'm looking for. And then when you're calm, it doesn't mean you get out of the chair. It means then we can start working with what the problem was. See, there's a difference too. What does he want? He just wants the freedom again. What do you want? You have to ask that question. What do you really want? Him to have freedom?
I don't know. So be obedient and listen to my command.
Yeah, you want to train his heart.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? That's where we start messing up, because we get caught into behavior is good, so we're good. I got to work on his heart. So it means I am going to talk with them. Even a little one, I'm still going to talk with them. They may not understand everything. I'm going to still talk a little bit. Here's what God wants, is what you need to do, and this is the behavior I expect. Okay? And now you can go. We're going to try it. Let's see if you can handle it now. It's just a constant. That's why it's so time-consuming. And there's times when your 2-year-old is going to get up in the morning and say, today is a good day to die, and I'm taking her with me. Okay? I don't know why. This is nature of sin. Another day it's just like, oh, wow, God just blessed me with a little angel. The next day they grow horns and they're demons again. But it's our consistency that has to be there, we keep in mind what we're really after. But we get caught up in so many things in life ourselves, we're selfish ourselves, and we forget what we're really doing. And so we're always looking for the shortcut. You take the shortcuts, and it's going to come back and bite you. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes a lot of sacrifice, and that can come in a lot of different ways. But you have to be consistent, which is the blank there on cautions number 1. Because you're going to chasten, you're going to bring some kind of consequence, some kind of pain to bear for foolishness, defiance. That's active or passive. All right? You can have a child actively defy you. You can also have the one that passively, like you want them to go someplace. And this can be dangerous if you have bad back, so we have to be really up on it, because for Diane, you grab their hand and you're taken some way and they don't want to go. What do? Now they could actively pull against you, right? What else could they do?
Just drop their feet from underneath.
They just go limp. Well, what is that? That's as defiant as the kid who's yanking on you. It's passive defiance, but it is defiance. And that one, if you're not ready for it, if you have a back like Diane, that can jerk you around, and that's dangerous. So understand that. You tell a child not to come into the room because you just wash the floor. Well, there's a child who just boldly comes where no man should go before. No toddler should go right now. That's defiance. And there's a kid who goes, well, which is defiance? Both of them. All right? Which one do we chat, or which one are we going to be faster to correct? Old guy. He's actually easier to deal with. That one's harder. But it's still just as defiant. Okay? Understand, if our goal becomes the heart, we're more quick to see those things. If it's just behavior, you're going to miss a lot of that. Again, behavior is the easy part. Behavior is what you're doing with a 2-year-old. I know it's struggling because it can be so difficult sometimes. That's the easy part. You've got to keep thinking, I'm after their heart. What I'm doing now in behavior is all for a goal of reaching their heart. I've got to teach them where they have self-control. Because once I can have self-control, I can start teaching all the other things. Even with your 3-year-old, Michael's coloring, right?
Yeah.
All right. How easy is it for a 3-year-old to keep coloring within the lines?
It's pretty difficult.
It's difficult. Because what does it take?
Self-control.
And what does he not have?
Self-control.
He also doesn't have the physical ability, because to control your hand that way takes effort. So it can be very frustrating because he doesn't have the ability. So something as simple as coloring actually is a great learning device. And when you start seeing they're coloring in the lines, why do we praise them? Is what are we actually praising for? That is so good, Michael. You've got enough self-control to do this, and you've learned how to control your hands. Wow, you're growing up. You're going to be a big boy really fast, right? So that's the encouragement side of it. But we sometimes forget these things of what's actually going on. What we're striving to do here is be consistent, be eminent, okay, or there's immediacy with our punishment, again, because delayed on our part is letting them get away, and it stills the evil into their heart. We're going to try and make sure we're not exasperating them, make sure, and I emphasize this, I know a lot today, they can actually do it. If it's beyond their ability, you exasperate them, because you're requiring them to do something they actually can't do. If you want them to not spill the cup and they don't have the dexterity yet to do that, and they're spilling the cup and getting in trouble for it, you're frustrating them. They want what's in the cup anyways, they don't want to spill it. There's a big difference between that and purposely knocking it over, or playing with it when you told them not to and knocking it over. So don't give them what they can't handle. You're always testing them. That's sort of this, can they handle the freedom? Can they handle the responsibility? You only let that grow as they can do it. It'd be different for each child at different ages. So you're looking at that. Never chastise when you're angry, period. The anger of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. All right? That can include telling them, you're going to sit here, you're going to stay in your room until I go calm down. When I am calm, I will come back and deal with you. All right? That's correction for both of you, right? When I am calm, we're going to deal with this thing. If you correct while you're angry, you're in sin. And you won't do it correctly. You have to be able to be calm and clearly explain. So they understand their correction is because of their own sinfulness, their own failure to obey you. You don't want them getting onto you. And then don't blame the child for your failure. If you're inconsistent, don't blame the child because they took the gamble. Correct them still because they still were wrong, but don't get onto them about, why can't you just do it? You're doing it yesterday, etc. Yeah, but what happened? You're inconsistent. All right, just say, apologize. You know what? I realize I let you get away with this. I was wrong. This is the standard. This is what we're doing. This is what's required. Okay, use that as a correction for yourself. And do be quick to apologize to your children too. I was wrong. Here's what's going to happen now. I'm going to correct this on myself. What a great model. Because isn't that what you want them to be as adults? Wouldn't it be nice if that's the way all your friends were acting? When they do something wrong and they quickly come to you as, you know what, I was wrong, please forgive me. Let's correct this. And I know you have perfect marriages, so that would never apply to her. Helps in marriage too, right? That's the model you want for your kids. All right, instilling wisdom, molding the heart. Again, I've been talking about this a lot. Teaching responsibility is A. I talked about instruction, I talked about encouragement. Verbal praise, use it a lot. Most of your instruction, most of your correction, if you want to use that term, actually isn't the negative, it's the positive. It is, good boy, to put away your toys. It's a physical affection, give them a hug or just a pat on the head. If you have boys and you give them a buzz cut, you can rub their head, because that feels so good anyways. And they like it. Those kind of things. It may be an occasional special treat if you've seen they're working really hard at something. Be careful about treats that becomes an expected reward. It has to be a reward, not expected. If you do it consistently, they think they're earning it. All right? For example, you're shopping, they've been really good with you, they've not been wiggling around in the cart or something, they've done what you said, and you don't let them even see you did it, just get something, and then when you get to the car, just say, you know what, here's a special treat, you were so good today, and I am so happy, thank you. All right, that's a special treat. You do it every time, it's going to, where's my candy? What do you mean I get my candy? Well, next time it's going to, that's the candy I want, I earned it today. No, you didn't.
It's like at Stop and Shop, they give away lollipops, and Raymond knows every single time, but there's been times where Joseph doesn't get a lollipop, and and you feel, but it's the hard one, when you're in the store.
Wow, I hadn't heard that one before.
Mm-hmm.
So the stores learn to bribe the kids so they don't create a problem in the checkout line.
Well, they
wow.
And I have a nice little thing, and Raymond remembers, oh, we're going to the store. Remember, we have to listen, Joseph, so we get a lollipop at the end. I'm like, and so.
This is the advantage of multiples.
Yeah.
Because the older one will learn the lesson and teach the younger one.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. Mm-hmm.
I'm told by the time you have 6, it's almost they raise themselves. But it's those first 5. We wanted 6, but God only let us have 3. So I can't speak from experience. So encouragement. Correction, again, if direct defiance, no, refusing a command, doing something else, then there may be chastisement, as we talked earlier. With a toddler, it's usually a hand offense, it's a simple slap on the wrist. It may be just a simple, very slap on the buttocks or the thigh or something like that. There's really not a lot needed because it doesn't take much to get their attention. As they get older, we have another class, we'll talk about increasing that. But it's simply that the pain has to be greater than the pleasure of the sin. Okay? If they forget something, because you have to teach a lot of these lessons many times, they lose the privilege. Because the pain of removal is the logical consequence of mishandling the object. For things like toys, or not playing properly with other children, you lose the privilege of being with them. Okay, you can't play with them because you're not treating them properly. You can't have that toy, you're not using it properly, so you remove it from them. Give them a chance in a day or two. We'll try it again tomorrow, or maybe next week, or you know what, maybe this toy is just too much for you right now. Let's try it again in a month. You can tell them that, but you're the one making the assessment, not the child. That's where you got in trouble. You're letting the child make the assessment for you. Okay, again, the child gets older, you're into the 2-month age, again, it may be a hand slap or a little slap on the buttocks. Okay, social graces. There's actually a handout on please. You're going to teach them. That's the sign language. It's please, it's thank you. Just common graces, because it's part of self-control. It's part of that God says other people are precious. I want to treat them that way. Teach them while they're young. Some people say, well, why yes ma'am, yes sir, yes mommy, yes daddy. When you find something else that's respectful, that's fine. It has to be something that's respectful. We required our children to use terms of respect when addressing people as they got older. You know, it was, when they could articulate things, it was yes, you know, yes Mr. Cologne, you know, yes Mrs. Jordan. It was those things because we wanted them terms of respect. If they're really close, it might be aunt or uncle or something like that. But something that teaches them they are not at the level of the adult. That's really what's at issue here. That's part of respect, and that they're not there yet. It will be eventually, but they're not there yet. That's part of social graces. In training, it could be verbal admonishment. You say something. It can also be sometimes just a stern look, too. Even your 2-year-old can get that, right? Just the way you look at them, they recognize, uh-oh. Right?
Monique dishes out the stern looks too sometimes.
She's mimicking you. Okay? If that's a rude thing to you and disrespectful, you can say, Monique, you, no, and give them the look back. If after training them, again, we've talked about isolation. If that kind of isolation, it could be without toys. Okay? They just have to sit in there. That's really miserable. They're a little older, they have enough self-control, have them just sit in the chair and wait for you. Okay? Raymond can do that. I don't think Joseph probably is too good.
No, he does.
He does do
It
that.
took a lot of bringing him back and back,
Okay.
but now we have a little yellow chair in the room, and can't have a toy. Then he just sits there and waits for him.
The
to come.
yellow punishment chair.
The yellow chair.
Ooh.
Raymond will bring himself too. I haven't got you, Joseph, to bring himself.
Now we
there
know
yet.
where they're going to be. They won't like yellow growing up. Okay. Another thing, remember, children learn by repetition, so don't lose heart. You may get frustrated, but they need the repetition. Over and over and over again. Now let's put it all into practice. Here's a question to ask yourself. Number one, is it acceptable? Whatever it is they're doing. Because you, the parent, have the right to decide when, where, and what your child does. Okay? Again, that's up to you. Wiggling. When is wiggling fine? When you're playing on the floor, when you're having a good time, etc. When is wiggling not fine? On the changing table, okay? You're going to be teaching them those kind of things. When is exploring fine? When you set a boundary. When is exploring not fine? When it's outside your boundaries. Okay? And that will change as they get older, right? The little ones, it's the playpen, it's their room, it's maybe the house, then the yard. It will keep expanding, but you will set the boundaries. You set the boundaries. Some things are off limits. And even when they're exploring, again, going back, there's cabinets they can get into and cabinets they can't. They can get into their drawer that has their toys in. They may not get into your drawer with your drawers in it. Okay? They can't play with your underwear. You may, your child's taking a bath, they're old enough, they're in a bathtub, not a bassinet, they're in a bathtub. And they're busy playing and splashing, is that okay? Sure it is, if you want them to. When does it become not okay? When you tell them, okay, no more splashing, we're going to clean you up and we're done playing. Okay? Do you see where the boundaries are set? You set them. And it's okay to let them do these things. So it's not like you may never play in the tub. You can play in the tub. I hope they keep a little rubber ducky. We like little submarines. But then there's a time for play and there's a time not to. That's important because they start learning that it's not the behavior, it's the setting of the behavior. That's our self-control and thinking through issues. Second question, is it good stewardship? Again, we are stewardship of everything we have. That goes back to the question you had earlier. We're stewardship. The towel actually doesn't belong to you either. It actually belongs to God. You are a steward of it. You're letting her have this one. She's a steward accountable to you. You're a steward accountable to God. So how does it fit good stewardship? Is food to eat or to play with? It's to eat. Now mashed potatoes are wonderful to play with, right? It's to eat. What are toys to play with? What toys can you throw?
The ball.
The ones that are made for throwing. When can you throw them? When is the proper time to throw them? Not at any point. So they're not throwing the wooden blocks. Okay? You play with the toy properly. Beds are to lay on, not to jump on. You want a trampoline? You get the trampoline. Alright? Now if you want to jump on their beds, okay, let's put something up because what's going to happen? Alright? That's actually the major reason being careful of jumping on the beds. Because they get in the habit of it, they're doing it while you're not there, and now they take a tumble and you don't even know about it. Okay, that's actually part of the reason. Plus the stewardship toward the bed. Are you treating the bed properly? What you're trying to do is instill in them is a thoughtfulness for treating things for what they're made for. Not abusing them. Okay, now I'll go to bed. If you wanted to play on the bed as a trampoline, it's your bed. Okay? And maybe it's a cheap trampoline, because trampolines aren't cheap either. But you'd have to think through the safety. And what are you teaching them? A proper usage. So maybe there's a time to jump on the bed when you're present, and there's a time not to jump on the bed. You've got to think through those things. Is it good stewardship? Next one, do I want it to continue if I let it begin now? That's a huge one. Because what is minor now can become huge. Let's take food. Picky eater. Where does that stop? Where does that come into learning thankfulness? Okay? Whining for attention. Whining is not an acceptable form of communication. Yes, we use that very phrase to our 2-year-olds. And teach them the proper way. Okay, no, okay, and we make the sound, and that's not proper. Because if I don't, it gets worse. You stay where you put them. Do you want a child who won't stay in the shopping cart when they're in the shopping cart, it's here, you've turned to look at the produce and pick it out, and they climb out and go off the other way? You need them to stay put. So a little problem can become a huge problem as you get older. You give them a command, stay with mommy, you go shopping, and they don't stay with mommy. Again, kids, they're going to want to wander. You don't want that. You don't want where is my child? That is a horrible feeling. I don't know that from our own family, but I know my younger brother wandered off someplace. And the police picked him up miles from where he wandered off. We have no idea to this day. He was only like 2. He just wandered off. Man, the fear. It's a whole lot worse now than it was in 1962. Okay? I would never want anybody to have experience that, but it happens all the time. Okay? So a little problem can become a big problem. So that you want to keep that in mind. Do I want it to continue if I let it begin now? Next, is it respectful of authority and the feelings of others? And that's why first-time obedience becomes important. That's the first step in training them to be less selfish and thoughtful of others. And again, if you don't require them to obey, you're teaching them to sin. And so that includes manners. Some examples, saying no to your parents, physically hitting others, taking toys from other people. Next, from 1 Corinthians 6:12, is it potentially enslaving? Has it or will it become something the child must have? All things are lawful are for me, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful, but I'll not be mastered by anything. That includes things like a security blanket. Is that okay to have a security blanket? Sure it is. But at what point does it become enslaving? That they must have it. Okay? All our kids had something that was special to them, except Jimmy because he kept losing his. We still have a blanket that the friends I told you about earlier, she made a quilt, and Jonathan called it Baba. And that was special to him. We still have it in the cedar chest. It's special to us too because of who made it and how special it was to him. but we could see at one point he was becoming enslaved to it. He had to have it. That wasn't good. We realized there had to be a problem. Pacifiers. There's a whole article in here on that. At some point, you got to get rid of them because it actually becomes bad for them. You know, up through 6 months or so, fine. You get to a year, you got a problem. All right? Or they become enslaved to it. And there's ways to get rid of that. Poke a hole in it, there's no suction, it's no longer interesting. Or cut it off. Jonathan called it a baby fire. You know, and then we cut off the end. It's like there's nothing here. What's so fun? I don't want it. You don't want to become enslaved to things. That's the whole point. Switch up a blanket. Put a different one in there for a while. Sometimes the blanket, it's not the blanket nearly so much as they smell you on it. And that's good. You want them to be attached to you, not to the blanket. So it's just the idea here, just be careful they don't become enslaved to something. If you see that developing, then start correcting it. Substitute something else, just so they're not enslaved to something. That's a lesson for life. Another one, obvious, is it dangerous? You know, jumping off stairs, playing with sharp pointed objects, or pointed objects, putting things in their mouth. You're always going to be working with that one with 2-year-olds. You're going to be working that because that's going to be a natural thing, but there can be dangerous things that they might want to put in their mouth. Is it socially acceptable? That's where proper manners come in. There's an article in here later on about how to treat furniture or what people do when they come to your home. You want your children to have behavior that if they go to someone's house, they're not offensive. Let's face it, if you let your children run all over your couches and you go to someone else's house, what are they going to do? Run all over their couches. What are you going to do then? Well, hopefully you'll correct them with like, well, you know, in our home, okay, but you can't do this anywhere else. That's a tougher lesson. But you can do it that if you want. Because if you don't, here's what's going to happen. You're going to go to someone's house, your kids are, from their standpoint, out of control. They're under your control for what you've allowed, but it's a wide range. And your friends think, you're abusing my furniture. Are they inviting you back? All right, we had some friends of mine that came down and visited, and my wife, when they left, said, they're never coming back. We had brand new furniture the church had given us, and they were running on it, and the wife did nothing to correct it. So we changed our policy at that point, that if the parents won't correct it, we will, because we're stewards of what God has given to us. So be careful of that. Screaming, interrupting, there's rudeness that's part of that. Be careful what you allow. It has to be something, because you're trying to instill within them a thoughtfulness toward others. Do you realize that all of the idea of what manners are all have to do with courtesy to other people? Why do we learn to use our utensils correctly? Well, so we're not flinging food different places. Okay, why do we learn to chew with our mouth closed? So that while we're talking to someone, our food's not ending up in their food. That's a courtesy to others. They don't need to see what you're eating after it's in your mouth. How we speak to others, that's a courtesy to others. I want to treat them with kindness and thoughtfulness. Next question, will it work in multiples? This is a blessing of having multiple children because it teaches you it doesn't work in multiples. So suddenly I have to correct some things. A common one, going back to, he's a picky eater, because I've already given in on that one, and they want this, so mom becomes a short order cook. A lot of problems with that. One, are you teaching them to be thankful for whatever God's provided? Number two, here, the practical side, it doesn't work in multiples. This one wants this one wants that. And so you're catering to both. Meanwhile, your husband would like a decent meal. Okay? You want something other than chicken nuggets or tacos. You want some vegetables, whatever else. And you can't get to him because you're busy short ordering cook for what the kids want. No, we all eat together, and they can have favorite foods, and they can have foods they don't like as much. That's why I said that. They don't like it as much. They're not allowed to hate it. They just don't like it as much. And we're going to work with them to be thankful for whatever they get. And there's some instructions here on some of that. Does it work in multiples? Another one, multiples. How many toys do you allow in the car?
Two.
You got to figure that out, because at some point it becomes overloaded, right? And if you got multiples, it becomes even over. What do you do? You got to think through that, because what you allow here is going to just multiply. That's just a big consideration. Can you continue to practice with more than one child? Is it necessary? Okay. Desire does not constitute need. It may be a fine thing. Is it necessary? And it's fine to tell your children that's not right now. That's not needed right now. Okay? Hey, God does that with us a lot of times. Things we would like it, and it'd be a good thing, but it's not necessary now. There's something else He wants us to do. So that includes things like the why questions. You in that stage? They're getting the why? Okay. I love the why questions because it's just this, the world is so interesting to them. You know, and sometimes they ask you questions like, I don't really know. And sometimes it's simple, why is the sky blue? Well, it's because it has to do with the refraction of light and the way that blue light scatters, red light goes through, and so what you see is the scattered light is blue. Do the Snoopy thing. Because it's not green. Oh, okay. Schultz actually put that in a cartoon. I thought that was great. You don't have to have it. It's not green. You can give simple answers. Do you have to answer every why question? Of course not. Do you have to answer every why question at the moment? Of course not. So, is it necessary encompasses that idea. At the appropriate time. That's a good question. Well, we can answer that later. Right now we need to do this. What did you just do? You directed them where you want them to go. And what is necessary. Okay? Mommy loves to answer your why questions, or you can even say, that's a good question for Daddy. Let him get involved with this. Okay? Is it necessary for them to decide what to wear? Little ones? No. They wear what you tell them. Okay? As they get older, you start getting a little more freedom. Is it necessary? What to eat? Is it necessary? Should that be with the little ones? Of course not. You decide. As they get older, you can start doing that. We would have a red plate, and they got to choose a special meal for a special occasion for them. That became special, and it was special. All right? Or she might ask once in a while, is there anything you'd like? I'm going to the store, is there anything you'd like? Okay? But you're deciding it, not them. It's not necessary for you to do that. Okay? Those questions, simply think through it. Now I've already covered a bunch of this, but some specific things. How about eating habits? And notice how it's even directed here. Godly character through, and we have several ideas here. Eating habits, okay? Promptness and thoroughness, and these are suggestions. Okay, they're not. This is not the rule book. You can have these notes. It's not the rule book. They're suggestions. You've got to think through your children, how it applies in your family. But children eat when parents direct them to eat, that it's time to eat, not just because they say, I'm hungry. All right? It's like, we're going to eat here. Or you may say, you know what, it's be a while before we eat. Here's a snack. But we're going to eat later. You decide. Okay? Again, you have to do this. Be careful of snacks simply because it can disrupt your meal, but you decide where that best fits in with your schedule. And you can figure that out. You know how long it's going to be. It may need a snack. Just be careful that how that works. It needs to be something that's more flexible than just a routine. If that makes sense. In your routine, it may be as we get a snack in the afternoon for whatever reason because you know they're going to need it. If it becomes that this is normal, you don't want to end up, they have their snack and then they don't eat their dinner. And that's how you're going to judge it. They won't eat their dinner. That's because they like the cookies a whole lot more than the broccoli. Okay, you have to make those decisions. Just be careful with that. Okay, another one, set a reasonable time limit on eating the meal. Sometimes they want to dawdle. There's a time to eat and a time to do the other things in life. So we've set aside this time, and we actually got a timer. And I figured that out pretty quickly. So, okay, if you're not done by then whatever's left goes in the fridge. You get it for breakfast, you know, or for the next meal, whatever that is. So they would learn to eat in a reasonable time period with the rest of the family, not because they're busy playing and doing everything else. That's teaching them to use their time wisely, efficiently. That's all that's really about. Another one, playing with, play is wait till they're after the meal's over, not during the meal. So don't give them a toy until the meal is done. Then give them a toy, and they can play there while you're finishing up yourself. Good manners, teach them to show respect. Again, we talked about that. Sign language, please, thank you. The principle here is thoughtfulness for others, and in giving thanks is giving thanks to God. You're teaching them that we're always, everything we have comes from God. That's why you're going to teach them not to be finicky eaters, picky eaters. This is what God's provided. We need to at least try it. And if they don't like it, they can say it. You know, well, I don't care for that very much. That's the kindness. How does that help you? You go to somebody else's house, and they serve a meal. You don't want them saying is, I don't like this, you know, or this is disgusting. Kindness is I don't care for this very much. And you can teach them as they have to try it, but they can leave the rest of it there. You can work with them. That's good manners. Bottles, cups, utensils. Difference between a toy and a utensil. Hands. Okay. Little ones, you have them want to put their hands in their mouth while you're feeding them, so you've got to grab the hand, put it in the spoon, right? Remember doing that? So that's teaching them where the hands go when they go and what they're actually used for. Thumb sucking, there's a whole thing on thumb sucking in here. Being careful with that. That's not a pacifier. There's some stuff about how to deal with that. Food is for eating, not for playing, throwing on the floor, not for modern art works. I remember we had someone, they carried with them a splat mat everywhere they went. This big mat, they'd put the high chair on, they're like, what is that? Well, they throw food on the floor. Well, why? You can teach them not to throw food on the floor, okay? If you have a really expensive floor and you don't want to get dirty, okay, I understand that, but okay, is that a way of life? There's a problem here, okay? Whining, that's the blank there. Whining is not an acceptable form of communication. A couple of things help with that. One, be careful about avoiding being distracted while feeding, because that's why they're whining. They're trying to get your attention of, you got the food and you're busy on your phone, the food's here and they're, I can see it. Can't I have it? I would whine. So don't be distracted. Two, use the time to talk to your child while you're doing that, okay? That's a wonderful time. This is what the foods are. This is mommy or daddy child time, even while they're feeding. If they whine, say no, mimic the sound, then demonstrate how they should ask. Withhold what they want until they ask properly and not whine, okay? If they're whining and you give into it, you are teaching them to whine, and it's only going to get worse, all right? You don't want a little wine or a lot of wine with dinner. Baptist or not. High chair. They stay in until they're excused. If they get in the habit of climbing out themselves without your permission, guess what they're going to do other places, including the basket at the grocery market. They're going to climb out because they're being taught they can decide what they want. So they stay there until they're excused. Later on, when they're sitting at the table, they should be sitting at the table until you excuse them. They should learn to ask, may I be excused? All right? Because there's a lot of dinner conversation you want them to be taking part of. They don't have the freedom to say, I want to be gone because I'm done and I'm going. That's up to mommy and daddy. Utensils, just teach them how to use it properly. Good suggestion here. You have a high chair, you have the table there, but get an unbreakable plate and use that to put the food on. That teaches them the skill they're going to need when they're actually going to learn to start sitting at the table. Teach it early. Okay, I know the high chair has the rim about it so things don't go on the floor, and that's good. But still use a plate, unbreakable, just to start teaching them skills. That same mindset goes into a lot of things. I'm looking forward. Mouth usage. Yes, I know rude noises. They're rude depending on that. Can be very funny depending when they're doing it. But no, rude noises, spitting, screaming, excessive crying, all those things, there's a proper time for things. And then there's not a screaming. When is screaming appropriate? Emergencies, then it's appropriate. When they got hurt, okay? That's an alert. When is screaming not appropriate? When they're screaming at you. That's my towel, mommy, okay? That's not acceptable. Screaming is not acceptable inside. That's a no, okay? Indoor voice, outdoor voice. Okay, spitting. No, that's a no. Patience. Use meals to teach patience. Even with infants you can do that. When solids are introduced, they chew at a reasonable place. Give them time to chew. A child that can sit in the high chair can wait a short time until you pray and give them food. Okay, that's part of it, so put them there while you're getting the food. Let them there, and you can talk with them and have a lot of fun with them, but they can wait for that. Flexibility, teach your child to be flexible with meals. How about infants, when you're doing solid foods? The blank there, in solid foods, introducing new taste, texture, food groups, teach them to accept and try new foods regardless of preferences. So these are just practical things, and a lot of you've been through this, you know it. I love getting them ice cream for the first time. That's so fun. New taste, new texture. The other things, some practical things about picky eaters here. Even if they don't like the food, keep serving it. And then periodically, you're amazed that sometimes they don't like it at one point, and then later on they do like it.
I have a question. How long is it for that? Because Raymond, I messed up in the beginning, and I'm definitely reaping when it happened.